Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Wednesday. I hope you all are having a fantastic week. We are going to talk about Everton's start to the season today and why I think the start has been quite promising, to be fair, and basically the main point around this live stream was to bring a little bit of positivity back to Evertonians, because obviously the last three games have been very grim, and having to sit down and talk about them and then going from game to game to defeat, it is quite draining, and you do find yourself getting into a few negative habits. So I thought, what, while it's the international break, while we don't play for a couple of weeks, I thought we'd sit down and we'll talk a little bit positively about Everton's start of the season, because when you actually sit down and look at it and look at the results and look at the performances and compare it to last season and where we've came, it has been quite a promising start. Now, of course, look, we're not the finished article. It hasn't been perfect. We've just gone on a 3-game losing streak. We've lost 3 on the bounce. The first time a Carlo Ancelotti side has lost 3 on the bounce for 14 years, and I'm not dressing that up in any way, shape or form or making excuses for any of those 3 games, but I've just taken a little step back and had a look at the results and the performances and where we were last season compared to where we are this season, and I thought, what, we'll sit down and we'll have a little bit of a promising, positive discussion about it, because, we like to be positive, we like to sort of sit here and look at the good in things, and like I said, I'm not one to sit here and, after losing 10 games say, yeah, but, this player looked half decent for 20 minutes. I'm not going to do that. However, I don't think the 3-game losing streak is the end of the world. And, it's, we've got an international break at the moment. Most of the lads are out with their countries. We saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin training with England again, which is great to see for Dom. James Rodriguez and Yerry Mina, of course, have gone on international duty with Colombia. Various players, Luca Dean's gone with France. Various players have gone out to join up with their international teammates. Richarlison, who we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the live stream. Richarlison's been winding a few people up again, so we'll talk about him a little bit later on. So I thought, what, while we're on an international break, we'll sit down, we'll have a look at the upcoming fixtures, we'll have a look at the start so far, and for me, it's a little bit of a fresh start, if you like, after the international break. We've got 3 very winnable fixtures. We've got Fulham, we've got Leeds, we've got Burnley, and then we're leading into a very difficult December period, which of course includes the Carabao Cup quarter-final at Goodison Park against Manchester United. And the fact that we're sitting here saying that we're in a Carabao Cup quarter-final so far this season as well just adds to how promising and how much of a good start it has been. No, it hasn't been perfect by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. We've just come off the back of 3 defeats, 2 of which you could say we should. There we go. We're back. We're back, I believe. Sorry about that. A little bit of a technical issue with the system. Listen, it happens. We're live. These things happen. So I was just saying, I think, before we were interrupted by my computer doing another madness, that we're going to talk about Richarlison in today's live stream. We're going to talk about James Rodriguez, the impact that he's had. I put a little poll out on Twitter yesterday, I believe it was, asking for opinions on how do we feel about the start of the season so far, obviously including those last 3 results, and we're going to talk about the results of that poll as well. True Blue says, hello, hi mate. Women says, someone still beat me. Liam says, hey Cameron, love your vids mate. How big of a boost is getting Richarlison back? We're going to talk about it in today's live stream. Liam, thank you very much for the kind word. It's a massive boost, mate. I think it's no secret that Richarlison is a massive part of this of this team, of this squad, of this football club at the moment. And I think Carlo Ancelotti realises that as well, given some of the words that Carlo Ancelotti has been saying about Richarlison. I think he understands just how just how important Richarlison is to our football club, not only in what he brings as an individual player, but how he affects everybody else's game as well. Wayne says it's not being negative, it's being realistic. Realistic can be positive. Maybe the start got people a bit carried away, but there's still a lot of work to do. We're definitely on the right track. You're spot on, and that's a fantastic comment. And that sort of is around about the basis of the live stream. It's not me sitting here saying, oh my god, we're still the best team in the world. It's saying just because we've lost 3 games on the bounce doesn't mean that it's been a negative start, or doesn't mean that we're in a negative reign of form. I suppose we're in a bad reign of form, but it doesn't mean that it's, everything's got toys thrown out the pram, it's the end of the world situation. It's not. Again, it was very easy for us as Evertonians, and I think some of us, including myself, probably were a little bit guilty when we'd beat Brighton and we'd beat Crystal Palace away from home and we had the slice of luck with the penalty. I think some of us sort of sat back and thought, what? This might be it. This might just be the season where we get the luck. This might be the season where we can continue winning games of football. But deep down, and at the start of the season, before we'd even kicked the football, we all knew that there was no way shape or form that Everton were going to go this season. I don't even want to mention unbeaten because that was never even a thought process. We always knew there was going to be games that we were going to lose. Carlo Ancelotti said it himself before the Brighton game. He said, look, we're in a bubble at the moment and that bubble will pop. There will come a time when we lose a game of football. There will come a time where, something doesn't go our way and unfortunately we don't get anything out of the game. It's how we react, and obviously over the last 3 games we haven't reacted very well to that. But now Carlo Ancelotti, obviously the team have got an international break. He'll get them back after the international break, and it's important that Carlo sort of replays that clip and say, look, 2 months ago I said we were in a bubble, and if we lose, it's important how we react. We haven't reacted very, very well, so we've got to go out there, in the next Premier League fixtures in the next couple of weeks or so and react and start getting back to winning ways. But you're absolutely spot on with me. It's being realistic again. Like I said, it was difficult for us to not sort of get carried away with the great form at the start of the season, and with James coming in and Alan and Decore and Carlo's first season and all of the sort of magic that was surrounding that. I think it was quite easy to say, we're in fantastic form at the moment and we don't really need to think about losing. But of course, the realistic situation was we were always going to lose games of football. We were always going to put in bad performances. Dominic Calvert-Lewin was always going to have a bad game here and there. Same with James Rodriguez. Richarlison was always either going to have a bad game or miss games, as has happened. So it is about being realistic. And I want to bring up a stat that John Blaine, who you might have seen on Toffee TV a number of times. He appears on Toffee TV often, and he put a tweet out on Saturday after the game, and it just put things into perspective a little bit. And he said, at this stage last season we were in the bottom 3. Dominic Calvert-Lewin had scored 2 goals and Richarlison had only scored 1. We'd lost 4 on the bounce and we'd just lost to Burnley. So that again is perspective. The perspective of this season so far is that, okay, we've had a fantastic start, we're in a little bit of a bad run of form, but it's not the end of the world. We've still had a very good start to the season. Another bit of perspective is, look where we were at this point last season. If you want to compare it to where we were last season. We were in the bottom 3. We just lost 4 games on the bounce. We were losing to sides that we weren't showing anything whatsoever. And don't get me wrong, we haven't showed a lot in the last 3 games. Against Newcastle, Southampton or Manchester United to show that we can keep up the great form. But last season, I remember the start of last season, we were woeful. That game against Burnley, we were absolutely dreadful. We showed nothing whatsoever. And, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, 2 goals, struggling to score. No creativity. Richarlison, 1. No creativity, struggling to score. And you compare that to the start of this season, again, sorry, a little bit of a sore chest there. It's not what you think it is. But you compare that to the start of this season, you've got 7th place, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, 10 games, 11 goals. Richarlison, 7 games, 4 goals, 2 assists, of course. Missed the last 3 games. You've got James Rodriguez, who's on 8 games, 3 goals, 4 assists with 13 points. And we're currently 5 points away from top of the league and only 3 points away from a Champions League spot. So we could come back after the international break. Beat Fulham and Southampton could lose, or, Tottenham could lose, or whoever else is up there, and we could jump right back into the Champions League places very, very easily by simply beating a side that have looked dreadful so far this season. Now, again, I'm not saying it's a guarantee that we will win that game because this is Everton Football Club, but it's a very, very winnable game and definitely a game that we should be winning. And if we go out and win it, and results go our way around the Premier League in regards to other clubs, then we could easily jump right back up there. And one thing that I've taken a lot of not inspiration, but I've had a close look at this season is not only Everton's results and the way that we're playing, and obviously not only when we win, looking at everybody else's games, but also when we lose. There's not one team so far this season, other than take away the top 2 who are very good, and who they are, I don't need to mention them, but other than those 2, there isn't one side this season that you look at and you think, you've put in consistent performance week in, week out, and you're getting results week in, week out. You look at Leicester, who, some would say have been on fantastic form, lost to West Ham, who looked very, very poor at that time. We beat West Ham. Again, Wolves, same, lost to West Ham. The Manchester United lost to Crystal Palace. Chelsea have drawn to West Brom at home after being 3-0 down. Tottenham, we beat Tottenham opening game of the season. So every other team in the Premier League, other than those top 2, are very, 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 they can lose games of football, and they can lose them quite easily against sides that you wouldn't necessarily think they would lose to, or they would drop points to. So I'm not really massively fearing the rest of the league and where we finish. If we do our business, if we win our games, then other sides are bound to drop points because they've already shown so far this season, 7-8 games in, that teams are dropping points left, right and centre against sides that you wouldn't think they would. So, like I said, we are only a couple of wins, a few points away from being right back up there in the top 4, in the top 6. And if we'd have beat Manchester United last week and, we'd have flown back into, top of the league at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, the results against Newcastle and Southampton would have been... they've been completely wiped off the face of the earth. No one had been talking about them. No one had been interested in them. Now, I understand that's how football works, and it's very much the same next week against Fulham. If we beat Fulham, nobody's really going to be talking about the Manchester United game or the Southampton game or the Newcastle game. I understand that. However, again, it just shows if we'd have beat Manchester United, we'd have been top of the league. Come half 12. Okay, we mightn't have stayed there for very long, but would have been right back up there, and we couldn't have done any more about that. So we're still in and around those positions, and to say that we've lost 3 games on the bounce at the start of a Premier League season and we're still within touching distance of top of the league, never mind top 4, it just shows the promising start we've had. Obviously, we started the Premier League season with a brilliant 1-0 victory against Tottenham Hotspur away from home. Again, massive win in regards to a mentality switch in the football club. We hadn't beaten a top 6 side, a big 6 side, if you want to call them, whatever you want to call them, for 7 years since we beat Manchester United at Old Trafford. We hadn't beaten a top 6 side away from home in 7 years. We hadn't beaten Tottenham, I don't think, in maybe even over a decade at their ground. Turned up first game of the season, played them off the park, beat them. We then played West Brom at home, I believe. Again, conceded a couple of silly goals, but got back into that game. They had 10 men and we just completely ran away with it in the end. A couple of Carabao Cup fixtures obviously in between, beating Salford, Fleetwood, West Ham as well. Beat West Ham, again, we absolutely embarrassed West Ham at Goodison Park, at a West Ham team that are turning up now and are giving teams a real sort of a hard game. Drew with Spurs, obviously. I think they drew with Manchester City as well. So again, these aren't results that you look at and you think, oh yeah, but you should be winning them. These are teams that we were playing that had proven before that they could turn up and they could beat sides. Crystal Palace away from home, very tough fixture. Crystal Palace the week before had turned up to Old Trafford and beat Manchester United quite convincingly. Went out there away from home, beat them. Obviously, we beat Brighton, and all of a sudden we were 7 out of 7 wins, 4 out of 4 in the Premier League going into the first international break. Now, I don't really want to sit here and say the first international break through our form, or the first international break was the reason as to why, the form went out the window, because I don't think it wasn't, and I think that's an easy excuse. But of course, we come back from the international break. We had the Merseyside derby. We come back twice in that game, to get a point out of it. A little bit of luck at the end, maybe with the VAR, but we had a man sent off in that game, and that was Richarlison, and that was sort of the big turning point, I think, for the start of our season, was losing Richarlison. I don't think there's any Evertonian that can sit here now and honestly say to me that the last 3 results aren't remotely down to Richarlison's absence. I'm not completely blaming it on Richarlison, and I'm also not going to sit here and say every player that performed in that game against Southampton, games against Southampton, Newcastle and Manchester United, I'm not willing to sit here and excuse all of those performances because they were without Richarlison, because the fact of the matter is they weren't good enough, regardless of who's playing there. They weren't good enough individually, but realistically you cannot sit here and say, Richarlison's absence didn't mean much. It did. It meant an awful lot. We all know how much Richarlison brings to Everton Football Club, but it's not just about how much he brings as a player in terms of his individual ability. We all know he's brilliant on the ball. He takes players on, he runs at players, he's direct, he creates chances, he's getting assists, he's scoring goals so far this season, 7 games, 4 goals, 2 assists. He's constantly involved. If he's not assisting, he's usually the pre-assist, if you want to call it that. Or he's creating chances, he's running at people, he's creating space for Dominic Calvert-Lewin to get into, for James Rodriguez to get into. Not only that, but Richarlison's being there and Richarlison being in this team affects everybody else's game as well. James Rodriguez hasn't got that, ball over the top to the left-hand side when Richarlison isn't there, because he simply either doesn't trust or he knows that whoever's on that left-hand side hasn't got the directness of Richarlison, so he doesn't play those type of balls. Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't got the service, he hasn't got that teammate next to him who creates the space for him. Going back, Luca Dean hasn't got that defensive cover, so he can't make those blistering runs up the left-hand side, because he knows that when he makes those blistering runs and Richarlison's on the pitch, Richarlison's going to get back and help him out, and he's going to get back and defend, and he's going to be there and throw himself in the way. Whereas when Richarlison's not on the pitch, Luca Dean doesn't know that whoever's replaced him is going to get back and make those runs, so he's a little bit more reserved. He doesn't get forward as much. So it's very clear from the last 3 games and the last 3 results and the last 3 performances how important Richarlison is to this Everton team, and we don't need to talk about it for hours because we've literally mentioned it in every one of the reviews, the Newcastle review, the Southampton review and the Manchester United review, about how vitally important he is to this team. And look, the Newcastle game, we spoke about him a lot because he was the only absentee. The Southampton game, we had James out, we had Seamus Coleman out, we had Luca Dean out, so it was a little bit different. The game against Manchester United, again, it was just evidently clear that we lack so much when Richarlison isn't there. Even just the basics of having a player who's direct and who runs at players and who wants to create chances and whose sole focus is to either score or create a chance for somebody else. And we just simply don't seem to have that on that side of the pitch when Richarlison isn't there. I know a lot of people have spoke about young Anthony Gordon, who of course played in the under-23s game a couple of days ago against Chelsea, actually got a fantastic assist at the bar as well. He probably is the most like-for-like replacement in terms of directness, but he's incompatible in terms of ability. You can't, no matter how much we like Anthony Gordon, no matter how much we want to see him playing, no matter how much we want to see him getting involved, you simply cannot sit here and compare him ability-wise to Richarlison. You know, Richarlison is just, again, he's a different class. He is an absolute different class. And Carlo Ancelotti's been talking about Richarlison, and we will talk about that in a little bit later on in the live stream. But again, that was the momentum switch for me. That was the change in our form, the change in our results, of course, was, you know, after that Merseyside derby when Richarlison picked up a red card. Again, I'm not going to sit here and allow Richarlison to go scot-free. It was a ridiculous tackle that he probably shouldn't have made in an area in the pitch that he didn't need to make it. You know, and if he wouldn't have made that challenge, I think we'd have had a much better chance of winning all 3 games. Not saying we absolutely would have won all 3 games, but the stats don't lie, and the stat is that, you know, since Richarlison joined Everton Football Club in the summer of 2018, in the games that he hasn't played, we haven't won one Premier League game that he hasn't featured in, and that you know, that very clearly shows. Just going to tweet the stream out. I will get in the live comments in just a second. Bear with me 2 seconds. So yeah, look, listen, ultimately, again, you know, we don't have to sit here, we don't have to talk about how important he is, we don't have to talk about how we've missed him so much in the last 3 games, but I do think it's important to, when you're looking at the start of the season, to think, well, okay, we haven't just had a full strength side out and had the side out that was beating Brighton comfortably and beat West Brom comfortably and got a tough win against Palace. We haven't had that full side out and lost 3 games on the bounce. We simply haven't. Okay, there's only been 1 player taken out of that side in the games against Manchester United and Southampton, but that 1 player is, for me, our best player. He's our most influential player. He does the most on the pitch, whether the ball's at his feet or whether it's off the ball, he does the most on the pitch. Yes, James Rodriguez is a brilliant technical player, and you know, technical wise, he's probably the best player in the club, but Richarlison, for me, is the best player at Everton Football Club. He does so much. We spoke to Kevin Campbell last week. The video's up there. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. I think it's a great video, personally. But Kevin Campbell said Richarlison's the key to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He said he's basically the key to everything, and he is. And when you take that key out of the team, you know, the structure falls apart. Think of it as a Jenga block, and you've got that one main block holding the whole structure up in the middle of it. You take that whole block out, no matter how good the top blocks look or the bottom blocks look, you take that middle block out and it all just falls to bits. And that's what we've seen over the last 3 games. And I suppose the biggest bit of you know, the most promising news is that Richarlison will be back against Fulham, and he will be back for the foreseeable future, as long as he doesn't pick up any injuries, touch wood, on international duty, or he doesn't you know, he doesn't get suspended again. And I actually think, I know I've seen a couple of people sort of worry about Richarlison going on international duty now and worry about what happens if he picks up an injury and then, we still haven't got him when he comes back. But I actually think the international break will be quite good for Richarlison. It'll allow him to get a game time under his belt and return to that match fitness. The last thing we need is a Mason Holgate-esque situation where Richarlison starts against Fulham, and because he hasn't featured in any of the last 3 games, he's just not up to scratch in terms of squad fitness wise or match fitness wise. So if he gets, I don't know, maybe 90 minutes in one of the international games and 45 minutes in the other, or he might get 90 minutes in both, then at least he'll have that sort of match day fitness, and he'll be back ready to go against Fulham. Obviously, touching wood that he doesn't pick up any injuries or further suspensions, which I would hope he doesn't. If you're enjoying the live stream, by the way, so far, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. Really, really do appreciate it. Couple of 3,070 subscribers now, so if you could subscribe, it would mean a great deal. If you've already subscribed, thank you very much. Share the stream. Let's try and get as many people in here as possible. Share it on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of that good stuff. I want to go into talking about the results of the poll we put out on social media. It was on Twitter in a little minute, but we'll get back into the live comments. Whammy says, hey guys, Cam lad, how's everyone doing? I'm not too bad, mate. How are you doing? True Blue says, come on you Blues, certainly. Jason says, I'm annoyed. Read on a Liverpool forum, they seem blaming Gomez's injury on Pickford without knowing it all. Listen, mate, you know what? I'm not even surprised. I'm just not surprised. I'm really, really not. But I highly doubt Jordan Pickford had anything to do with it, but he probably will get the blame. And he'll probably get the blame from media as well, which is more embarrassing than fans doing it. Whammy says it's not... Oh, we read that one out. Whammy also says, fix your camera. Two Blue says, when Richie comes back, I reckon we will get back to winning teams. I hope so, mate. Jason says, I've seen a lot worse. Certainly. Eugene says, Alan hopes for Napoli repeat with Everton. Jason says, I just want to see us win something, finish fourth, or the top six isn't winning anything. Exactly, and we are in a Carabao Cup quarter-final, which again we're going to talk about a little bit later on. The Two Blue says, you talk about Everton with huge understanding. Thank you very much. Wimmy says, Brands has got rid of nearly all of the deadwood. I hope more will come in January. Some more will come in with some clever signings. We look a lot better. Spot on. Liam says, hey Cam, do you think Calvert-Lewin will win the Golden Boot? I don't know yet. It's very, very early to say. I think he's got a chance. He's got a big chance, but it's very, very early to say. You didn't put a video in there. Tim Howard asks Carlo Ancelotti about Everton, and Wayne says hopefully Godfrey can get going. So we have centre backs in the right positions. I think that will help the defence. So a couple of things mentioned there that I do want to talk about in the stream. Obviously the Carabao Cup quarter final, Ben Godfrey as well. You know, we talk about Marcel Brands and the fact that we have gotten rid of a lot of those players that are simply just taking up a wage on the books and you know, ultimately stopping us from going out there and improving the squad. And we will talk about them a little bit later on in the live stream, but let's get into the poll results first. I'll put a poll out on Twitter yesterday basically asking, listen, how have you saw the start of the season so far? How do you feel Everton have started? There was 4 options. There was great start, there was not too bad, there was got to be better, and there was awful. So out of those 4 options, 313 people voted on the poll. 11% voted great start, 52% voted not too bad, 36% voted got to be better, and only 1% voted awful. So the majority of votes, over half, going to not too bad. It was then close with 36% got to be better. So again, quite a landslide victory for not too bad there on 52%. Great start, 11%, a few people. Awful was, I think it was just basically a couple of people who weren't happy with the last couple of results. And same with got to be better, to be fair, 36%. And I think a lot of those people that voted got to be better. Listen, I don't know if anybody's seen the poll. If you're in the live comments and you watch and you've seen the poll and you voted on it, let me know what you voted on. If you're watching as a YouTube video and you've seen the poll and voted on it, let me know. But I think the got to be better votes were probably because of the last 3 results and the last 3 games that were very, very winnable. Look, if we'd have come up against Manchester City, Chelsea and I don't know, maybe Spurs at the moment, and we'd have lost those 3 games, then people would have probably thought, you know what, the very, very tough fixtures, the games that, you know, it would have been difficult to win. But it wasn't. We come up against Newcastle, Southampton and Manchester United. And no disrespect to any of those football clubs, Southampton are in decent form, but we should have been looking, for me at least, to get 7 points out of those now. We should have been beating Manchester United all day long. We should have been creating more chances and hitting their defensive issues. Newcastle should have been a win. And, you know, the Southampton game was always going to be a difficult game, but for me, we should have had more than enough to beat them. But there you go, the majority of people voting on that poll there, out of 313 votes, 52% saying not too bad. And I think that's the general consensus so far, as it hasn't been too bad. But that means that it's been promising, because, like I said, you compared to the start of last season, and we were absolutely woeful at the start of last season. And again, you know, fast forward 12 months later, Carlo Ancelotti is the Everton manager. We're 3 points off 4th, 5 points from 1st after 8 Premier League games, 13 points, currently sitting 7th. Our striker has got 11 goals in 10 games. You know, Richarlison, has got 4 goals and 2 assists in 7 games, and he's missed the last 3 games. James Rodriguez has come in, 3 goals, 4 assists. You've got Alan and Decore, and okay, it hasn't been great in the last 3 weeks, but it's still very, very promising. It was very, very good before that. It wasn't like we were average or we were okay prior to the last 3 games, and then we've lost 3 on the bounce. We were very, very good before the last 3 games, and then very bad in the last 3 games. So if we can bounce back after the international break and go and win another 3 on the bounce, then it sort of puts to sleep those last 3 results against Southampton, Newcastle and Man United, and we then move on, and we then go fair, and we then climb the table as we did at the start of the Premier League season. But, you know, again, like I said, I think we have to be as positive as we possibly can, and we have to try and, you know, feed more positivity into the football club, because 4 or 5 weeks ago, before the Merseyside derby in the first international break, you probably wouldn't find an Evertonian that would have said a bad word about the season so far, and I understand that everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I understand that we're not all going to sit here and go, yeah, we lost to Newcastle, we lost to Southampton, we lost to United, everything's still sound. I get it's not. I get that there's frustration. I get that there's questions about the manager's team selection. I get that there was certain decisions that you looked at and you sort of scratched your head and thought, what's that about? But that still doesn't take away from the fact that we won 7 out of 7 on the bounce, that we're in a Carabao Cup quarter-final. Again, a big, big, big topic of conversation when doing this live stream, a Carabao Cup quarter-final. I said at the start of the season, and I think I said towards the back end of last season as well, you could literally say to me now, Everton finish 8th or 9th in the Premier League and win either the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup, and I'd snatch your hand off for it, because we simply aren't a football club that are in a position to turn down winning a cup competition. We aren't a football club that are in a position to say, you know what, we'll throw the kids out for this game because we don't really want to be in this competition. We simply cannot do that. We have to win a trophy. That for me, that should be the main aim of the football club. Of course, should be progression and making sure that we finish in those European places, whether it be the Champions League or the Europa League, and making sure that we can bring in players and improve the squad. But for me personally, as a fan, the biggest aim is to win a trophy. I've never seen Everton win a trophy in my lifetime. 22 years old, I've never seen Everton win a trophy. If Everton went out this season and finished 8th, which is only a couple of positions better than what we did last season, but won the Carabao Cup, that's a success for me. That's a success. That's a season where we've showed progression in the league, and we've done something that we haven't managed to do for, you know, a long, long time. And if Carlo Ancelotti wins a trophy as Everton manager, he's succeeded. Whether you like it or not, he's succeeded if he wins a trophy as an Everton manager, regardless of where he finishes in the league, obviously. Again, if we get relegated, that'd be a different conversation, but I highly doubt that. But again, like I said, Carabao Cup quarter-final, big chance to redeem ourselves against Manchester United. Couple of days before Christmas, Goodison Park. If there was a crowd there, it would have been absolutely bouncing, which is very disappointing because we would have wanted the crowd to be there. But that doesn't mean that, you know, we haven't got a big chance of winning that game of football. I honestly think we have, and if we do, we're in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup, and you know, things are looking very promising going forward. If you're enjoying the stream, by the way, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe as well. I want to get into talking about Carlo Ancelotti and the effect that he's had on players so far since coming in, and the conversations that he's had with various players. So we will get into that in a second. Let's dive into the live comments first. Just found a new tab there on my YouTube thing talking about merchandise. Mad, didn't know you could do that. I haven't got any merchandise, but there you go. Eugene says most overrated player. Everton sent offer for Zuma. Not too sure what you're talking about there. Eugene also says Everton should have played Robin Olsen in goal against Manchester United instead of Jordan Pickford. I don't think Jordan done anything wrong, to be honest. Listen, again, I wouldn't have been opposed to have seen Robin Olsen in goal because I thought he played very well against Newcastle despite the results. But I don't think Jordan Pickford done anything wrong, so I'm not going to sit here and you know, go with that. But that's fair enough. Wayne says Olsen wouldn't have helped Eugene when your right back doesn't stop crosses and your two centre backs are 20 metres apart with Rashford free as a bird between them. There's nothing a keeper can do about it. He also says Holgate fresh back off an injury instead of playing out of position against Manchester United was never going to go well. I wonder if Godfrey wasn't fit. Well, there was rumours just before the Manchester United game that Ben Godfrey had picked up an injury and he wasn't called up to England under 21s because of an injury, but then he got a call up and he was on the bench against Manchester United, so I don't really know the situation there. But I want to talk about Marcel Brands as well before we go into talking about Carlo Ancelotti. Marcel Brands has had a massive task this season, not only to bring in players to improve this team, not only to bring in pretty much an entire new midfield because the midfield last season was atrocious, but also to get rid of some of the players that either don't want to be here or simply are just taking a wage and not affecting the football club in any way, shape or form. And I know there's still a couple of players that are at the club that you could say that about, but the majority of them have been moved out now. And that's massive credit to Marcel Brands. Me and Tom spoke about it a little bit on Monday's live stream. You know, we spoke about how important it was for Everton in the summer and for the next 2 seasons as well, not only to bring in players that improve the squad, but get rid of the players that have got no future at the football club, that are on 50, 60, 70,000 pound a week, which is stopping us going out and signing other players. And you know, Marcel Brands has done that again. You know, you look at, there's been a lot of discussion regarding Moise Keane and Theo Walcott leaving the football club. Both players probably wanted to leave the football club, and that's why they left. You know, you've had the contracts that weren't renewed in the summer, Nias, Martina, you know, Morgan Schneiderlin left the football club. We've had a lot of players that fans at the time, you know, stood back and said, these have got no future to the football club, get rid of them, that we have ultimately ended up getting rid of in order to make room for players coming in. And I think Marcel Brands deserves massive credit for that. We've brought in young Ben Godfrey, of course, who again, we're still yet to see in any real capacity. Okay, come in, you know, for a brief spell in the Merseyside derby and then against Southampton, but again, we haven't seen him starting. You know, other than that one game, we haven't seen him starting for Everton Football Club. He was out of position in both the Merseyside derby and the game against Southampton. So maybe we'll see Ben Godfrey against Fulham, either in the centre back position or in the central midfield where he's played before as well. Very promising. We've got a lot to be positive about as Evertonians at the moment. Forgetting the last 3 games, we've got a lot to be positive about. We've got Carlo Ancelotti as our manager, and I don't think any Evertonian doubts Carlo Ancelotti, and I think it would take a lot for any Evertonian to start doubting Carlo Ancelotti, because he's a manager who has won so much. And listen, the media and opposition fans, every time we lose a game, will turn around and go, oh, he's past it, he's this, he's that, he's not good enough anymore, because they just look on Twitter at who's won, and they make their judgments off a few clips that someone's put together on Twitter. But I don't think you'll find many Evertonians that are honestly sitting there saying, I've got doubts about Carlo Ancelotti. Not saying that he's got absolutely everything spot on this season or since he's come into Everton Football Club. He's made some questionable decisions, and there's some things that, you know, there's some team selections that he's made and substitutions that have been made that you do sort of sit there and think, well, that doesn't really make sense to me, but it might make sense to Carlo Ancelotti. And he has got things wrong, and there have been a couple of results and performances for me that fall on the manager, but that's always going to happen. Find me one manager in Wales football who hasn't you know, got something wrong, or whose team have lost the game, and you know, you couldn't say they weren't at fault. Every single manager in Wales football ever has been at fault in some way, shape or form. And Carlo Ancelotti is 12 months into a job at Everton Football Club. He's one transfer window, let's be honest, disregarding last January, because again, Marcel Brands doesn't really like to work in January, and Everton don't, you know, notoriously work in January. So disregarding the January transfer windows, Carlo Ancelotti's had one transfer window. We started the season 7 out of 7 unbeaten. We all knew it was going to end at some point. We all knew that even bringing in Alan, Decore, James, Godfrey, Olsen, it wasn't going to be enough for us to go unbeaten and win the league comfortably. Just wasn't. That's going to take years and years. It's going to take Carlo Ancelotti, for me, 2 or 3 years to establish his Everton team with his Everton players. If we're sitting here in 2.5 years' time and Gylfi Sigurdsson's still standing in the middle of the pitch pointing, and Andre Gomez is still looking like he's as slow as me granddad, and you know, Alex Iwobi still isn't performing, and you know, whoever else, then you look at Carlo Ancelotti and go, well, you've had 2 or 3 years here to either get these players out the club or to replace them with players that are better than them. Carlo Ancelotti's had 12 months. It was never, ever all going to happen in one transfer window. And maybe as a fan base, we fell into the feeling of maybe it has happened in one transfer window when we were winning every week and we brought in an entire new midfield. But then it was crashed back down to reality when certain players, Sigurdsson's, you know, Bernard's, Iwobi's, again, Gomez's, you know, their faults were brought to the light then. And then you're looking at it thinking, well, that's where we need to improve. That's where we haven't got, you know, Carlo hasn't got the team that he absolutely wants yet. He's got certain players that he absolutely wants, but he hasn't got the full strength squad that he absolutely wants. And let's not forget, our full strength squad with Richarlison, James, Calvert-Lewin, Luca Dean, Andre Gomez, Alan, Decore, again, the back four, Seamus Coleman, our full strength squad, fully fit, are, you know, better than a lot of full strength squads in the Premier League and will beat a lot of teams in the Premier League. But the reality of the situation is when you take 1 or 2 of those players out, or when one or two of those players are remotely unfit, then you could see where things are going wrong and you can see where we need to improve. But that was expected. Like I said, Carlo Ancelotti, one transfer window into his Everton career, 12 months into his Everton career. Did any of us really expect everything to be sorted by now? No, we didn't. And that's why we have to be positive, because the fact that we're sitting here saying we're, 3 points from a Champions League place, 5 points from first, we won 7 out of 7 at the start of the season, and we're only 12 months into a reign of a manager, one transfer window into the reign of a manager, and we've got rid of a lot of the deadwood, and we've brought in a lot of players that very clearly improved this team. You have to be positive for me. You just have to be. Anyway, let's get into the live comments before we finish up. I want to talk about Carlo Ancelotti and some of the things he has had to say about Richarlison and why that's weirdly riled some fans. Eugene says Everton needs to get rid of some deadwood in January window when it is open. Well, yeah, we do, but it's not as easy as that. Reece says Richarlison is the key to the whole club. Never mind Dominic Calvert-Lewin. The lad fully understands what Everton means to us. You're spot on, mate. You're spot on. Not only, like I said, his on-field ability, but off the field, his mentality, his attitude, his work rate. It's exactly what we need at this football club. And he's got that little bit of snideness. Nobody should let Richarlison lose that little bit of snideness. Nobody should take that away. I want him to be a snide player. I'm not saying I want him flying in on players in the last minute getting red cards for stupid reasons, but I want him to be a bit snide. We saw James Rodriguez's snideness against West Brom, where he gives a little elbow to Kieran Gibbs and Kieran Gibbs lashes out. James throws himself on the floor. West Brom go down to 10 men. We win that game comfortably. At that point, we'd won that game of football. You want your players to have a bit of snideness. I said that a couple of weeks ago. We need to be more snide. Okay, we're a lot better than what we were 12, 18 months ago in regards to getting in referees' faces. And, you've seen Seamus Coleman over the last few weeks or so. He was in Kieran Gibbs' face. He was in Harry Maguire's face last Saturday. We've got a lot better at doing that, especially under Carlo Ancelotti. Carlo isn't afraid to get in a referee's face and query a decision. We've got a lot better at doing that. For me, we now need to adapt to what everybody else is doing. And if that's kicking defenders' feet in the box and throwing yourself on the floor and winning a penalty, that's that. But you want your players to have that snide. I completely agree. Absolutely, completely agree. Abigail said we are looking for the pie in January as he is going cheap and can sign a pre-contract for 50 million. I'd fuck him off. I wouldn't even go near him, purely because, again, he's one that's been piping up about how can Jordan Pickford get away with such a challenge. Shut up, lad. Shut up. He's a good player, and if he gets his head down and comes out and says I probably shouldn't have said that, then yeah. But again, attitude-wise, I'm not too sold on him. Ewan says the pride of Mason Howard's way. Abigail says he's open on coming back to England. I'm sure he is. Women says we have got to do better in the long term to match the club's aspirations, but we're in transition and it's going to take time. We have a far more exciting starting squad. There are some issues to address. If James is the right winger, we need a right back that can work up and down for 90 minutes, and that's not Coleman anymore. Sorry to say, we need pace on the wing, so we have options if we play Richie or James, or if Richie or James can't play. Spot on, and Carlo Ancelotti might look at Everton this season or within the next couple of months or so and make that decision. He might say, right, okay, I want James Rodriguez to be our long-term right winger or right midfielder, so that means I need a younger right back who can get up and down, who can defend, who can attack. Or he might look at it and go, well, I'll just get a right winger in who can get up and down, who's got the pace, who's got the energy, and I'll move James into the centre of the park, either behind Dominic Calvert-Lewin or in that sort of 3 in midfield, and I'll see how that works. Either way, I've seen a lot of people talking about bringing in a right winger. That doesn't mean that James Rodriguez is going to be taken out the team, by the way. It just means that he's going to be moved into another position that he's better, suited at. But he's quite well suited at right wing as well. But like I said, I think you could stick James in the stands doing the programmes and he'd just be absolutely boss, because he's just a boss footballer. Women says hit that like, you filthy animals. If you could hit that like button, it would mean a great deal to me. TS Pro Wrestling says simply as this camp, we haven't got the squad to challenge anything until Carlo has 2 proper transfer windows. Spot on, mate. Spot on. And like, we've mentioned before, we haven't got the squad. We've got the starting 11 to challenge for me any team in the Premier League, as we showed in the Merseyside derby, but we haven't got the squad, and that is vitally important. But were we ever going to have the squad after one transfer window? No, that was never going to happen. Never ever going to happen. Chelsea bought about 15 players in the summer, spent over 300 million, and they're not doing great, are they? We brought 3 or 4 in, 5 in. Obviously Olsen being a loan to improve the squad, and we have improved the squad, but it's not the finished article yet. We've still got improving to do, and we will do that. Women says merch coming soon. Jason says, I don't doubt Carlo is still the best thing ever to happen to Everton. I remember Mike Walker. There you go. TS Pro Wrestling says, we haven't got the players to come in when our players get injured. You need to compete. You need 2 teams to compete. You're spot on. Ewan said, what do you think? Who do you think will be relegated this season? I think Sheffield United, Fulham, West Brom. I'm not even going to talk about Fulham because we played them in a couple of weeks. So I just know it'll come back to bite me on the arse. I don't think it's looking great for West Brom, to be honest, and I think the other spots up for contention. Jason says, I agree, Eugene. I know Burnley are down there, but Sean Dyche will steer them clear. Spot on. William says, will be nice to see Gabaman. I'm still not sure if he actually exists yet. Well, there you go. Gabaman, another name. You know, again, look at the start of our season. We're talking about squad and squad depth and how we need to improve squad depth. We haven't seen a fit Mason Holgate so far this season. We've only seen him for 90 minutes. We haven't seen John-Philip Gabaman this season, or last season, really. You know, we've still got Richarlison to come back into the team. That's 3 key players there. I know John-Philip Gabaman you mightn't be able to class as a key player, but he was brought in to start week in, week out for Everton. So I am classing him as a key player. You've got Jared Branthwaite, who was fantastic towards the back end of last season, to come back in. Anthony Gordon, youth, who have all been screaming to get a chance. He's got his opportunity. We're going to talk about Anthony Gordon a little bit later on in the week. So, you know, you're spot on. You're spot on, mate. Jason says, are we live versus Fulham? Don't think we are, sure. Until the Premier League vote on the pay-per-view, but I can see pay-per-view being voted against. Yeah, I think it will be voted against, and I'm not too sure where it's broadcasted, to be honest, mate. Eugene says it was the best signing in the summer window. I think James Rodriguez was Everton's best signing. Yeah, you've got to say James, haven't you? You've got to. And Wayne says, thing is, if Richie gets the ball clean and we break and score, everybody's applauding Richie's competitive spirit, and there's inches in. I want Richie trying to get the ball, wanting to win it. Who wouldn't? And he says, Gabaman definitely adds depth. Yeah, you're spot on. Look, you're spot on. I don't think there's much malice behind the Richarlison challenge on Thiago. It was just a very, very stupid challenge. But you're spot on. If he makes a connection with the ball and he goes down the other end and scores, then it's a completely different discussion. But that's football, isn't it? Hindsight is a wonderful thing. But talking on Richarlison, talking on Carlo Ancelotti, Richarlison is the latest player to have had a little conversation with Carlo Ancelotti, and for Carlo Ancelotti to have spoken to him and give him a little, a little bit of positive word. And this has wound up a lot of Liverpool fans, weirdly. I don't know why, because it's nothing to do with them, but there you go. And Richarlison had an interview, I think it was last night or maybe earlier yesterday, obviously with Brazil, because he's on international duty, and he was asked a couple of questions. He was asked about Alan as well, but he was asked about Ancelotti, and he said, Ancelotti has told me that I am in the top 10 forwards he has trained, that I will win the Ballon d'Or, and I will be a scorer in several championships. It is an honour for me. I want to improve even more. It inspires me. Now, this has wound a lot of people up that aren't Evertonians. A lot of Evertonians are happy with it. A lot of non-Evertonians have been wound up by it. What I would say to those people that have been wound up by it is, A, you've got no say in the matter whatsoever because you don't support Everton. B, it doesn't really matter if Carlo Ancelotti believes that Richarlison is in his top 10 best forwards ever managed. The amount of replies I've seen to that tweet was, well, he's managed Ibra and Bale and Ronaldo and this and that and the other. It doesn't really matter if Carlo Ancelotti genuinely believes Richarlison's in his top 10. He might genuinely believe that, but that's irrelevant. In the same way as that when Carlo Ancelotti told Seamus Coleman that he's the best captain he's ever worked with, doesn't really matter if that's true or not. What matters is that Carlo Ancelotti is putting his arm around these players, and he's not lying to them, because I believe that he believes in what he's saying. But what he's doing, it doesn't matter if Dave from Stoke believes that Richarlison is in the top best players that Carlo Ancelotti has worked under. Dave from Stoke hasn't worked with those players Carlo Ancelotti has worked with. Dave from Stoke hasn't worked with Richarlison. Doesn't matter if John from Cambridge doesn't think that Seamus Coleman's the best captain Carlo Ancelotti's ever worked with, because John from Cambridge hasn't worked with Ronaldo or Ibra or Sergio Ramos. Neither has he worked with Seamus Coleman. So those opinions they're irrelevant. Carlo Ancelotti obviously believes in what he's saying because he's saying it. But again, even if he's just saying it to breathe a bit of confidence, look at the end of that sentence from Richarlison. It inspires me. It makes me want to do more. I fully expect Richarlison to come back after the international break and absolutely hit the ground running. Not only because he's been out for 3 games, but again because he's had that arm around him from Carlo Ancelotti saying, you're one of the best at the moment. You can go very, very far if you get your head down and you keep working. In the same vein as Carlo Ancelotti saying it to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, in the same vein as Carlo Ancelotti saying it to Seamus Coleman. I personally believe Carlo Ancelotti believes in what he's saying, and I think he's telling the truth. And I think Richarlison and Dom and Coleman should believe that as well. I don't really care what anybody else thinks about it, especially fans of other football clubs, because they don't matter in this situation. But imagine the amount of confidence that is breeding for Richarlison. That bred for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who at the start of last season had 2 goals in 8 games. This season, he's played 10 games, he's got 11 goals. Seamus Coleman, who 12 months ago we were all having a go at because he was, saying sorry to Son after the Andre Gomez situation and he wasn't sticking up for his teammates. Now he's in the face of players, he's shouting, he's screaming, he's saying you won't do anything. These discussions from Carlo Ancelotti, these words of inspiration from Carlo Ancelotti are very clearly working. And if Richarlison comes out and scores an hat-trick against Fulham, then I'll be putting up pictures saying it worked. Because ultimately the goal of that conversation was for Richarlison to go, you know what, I've got somebody who believes in me here. I need to prove to them that I can be what they say I can be. I need to get me head down, I need to work. And I fully expect Richarlison to do that. Wayne says, because idiots just go, Ibra scored more goals, so he's a better manager. Don't think like that. Look at the complete player. Sure, Ibra scores more. He was a better team player, better attitude, defending. Yeah, again, that's it. Listen, a lot of those people commenting on that post don't like Richarlison for an obvious reason. But you're spot on, mate. You're spot on. Look at Richarlison. Look at what he brings to this football club. Look at what Everton don't have when Richarlison isn't there. Not just goals, not just directness. We don't have that defensive work rate, to help Luka Dean out. We don't have that ball for James Rodriguez to play all game. We don't have that, we don't have that partnership with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We don't have a lot when Richarlison isn't there. We don't. It's been proven. Abigail says Gordon needs a loan, in my opinion. There's obviously something he isn't doing in training, and he needs regular first-team football. Well, again, I don't really know. We're going to talk about Anthony Gordon on Friday with Cal. And Rob says, let's get back to winning ways, Blues. Spot on. Absolutely spot on. We need to get back to winning ways. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's live stream. Again, I wanted to breathe a little bit more positivity into the Everton fan base. I wanted to sit down. I wanted to talk about how, we can be positive and we should be positive about our start of the season. And the fact that, we're sitting here disappointed because we're not sitting top of the Premier League just shows how good of a start we've had. Yes, the last 3 games have been awful and I'm not making any excuses for them, but if we get back to winning ways, if we beat Fulham after the international break, if everybody comes back fit, if Richarlison's firing on all cylinders, then we'll all be happy again. And it hasn't, let's be honest, it's not the end of the world. We're still sitting in 7th place with 3 points off 4th, with 5 points off top of the league. So, there you go. Wimmy says, take care, guys. Thank you very much. If you have enjoyed the live stream, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. Like I said, we'll be back on Friday, 5:15, with another live stream, joined by Callum, as always. We're going to talk a little bit more about Seamus Coleman and more about Everton Football Club, of course. Adamski says, take care. Thanks, mate. Uden says, see you about the toffees. And see you on Friday evening. And Wayne says we will be Fulham. Hopefully, mate. Hopefully. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's live stream. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. Big thanks to everybody in the live comments. As per usual, if you're watching as a YouTube video, leave your thoughts in the comment section and we'll get involved with as many of them as possible. Cheers for watching. Subscribe if you're new. We'll be back on Friday, 5:15. And we'll see you soon.